Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hey girl, Marissa here. This week we are discussing my Codependummy calendar. What is a Codependummy calendar, you ask? Well, it's when you take on the role of being everyone else's secretary. That's a codependummy behavior, right? It's when you, as a bright young woman, are not only responsible for yourself and getting to the meetings or plans that you've made on time, but you are also responsible for the other people you are meeting or have plans with to get there. A codependent calendar is what happens to a young woman when you see her waiting patiently for her friend to arrive, to their set plans, but that friend is nowhere to be found, nor has she called, texted, or notified you that she's running super late. And you just wait there patiently for her to arrive. Stay tuned for more examples as we proceed with this episode. Before we dive in, let's check in, shall we? This is episode 98. 98! Everyone, welcome to the 98th episode of the Codependummy podcast. This is your hostess, mostest, Marissa. For those of you who are new, I am a licensed psychotherapist, twin, and I am on my healing journey from being a codependummy. I know I used to say I was a former codependummy, but I have learned, thankfully, as a consequence of creating, maintaining, sustaining this podcast that no, I am not a former codependummy. I'm on my healing journey to become a codependent diamond, right? And all her interdependent elegance. But yeah, I am codependent, and I fall into patterns, or I recognize patterns where I continue to struggle. So I'm on my healing journey along with you. And if you are new, or if you have been a listener for a while, I do want to let you know that I have a few openings in my therapy practice. If you reside in California and you resonate with the content of these episodes, if you want to stop playing small and start taking up some goddamn space with help from me as your therapist, please email Marissa at codependummy.com. And welcome to the new and old listeners. All right, so now that we're acknowledging you, let's focus on you. How you doing, baby girl? Can you believe that it is already Halloween? And happy Halloween to everyone who's listening on Monday, October 31st, when this episode airs. I cannot believe it's Halloween. I'm curious what you're dressing up as. I went to a Halloween party yesterday. I'm going to a Halloween party tomorrow because I'm so cool. And I, along with my sister, my husband, and my brother-in-law, we dressed up as the Ghostbusters, which I don't consciously remember ever seeing that movie. But super fun costume. I'm curious what you're dressing up as. And God, it's already November. So I'm curious how you're doing with practicing. The theme for the podcast this year, in our second year, I committed to a theme, honoring a practice of tenderness, being sensitive, gentle, and soft, loving towards yourself and your pain, sensitive to your pain. Any bucket list items you want to complete in 2022 that you need to prioritize this week and this month? How's your mood been lately? How's your body been lately? Are you needing anything that you may have been trying to deny or ignore? Like a bath, or a good talk with a friend, or a new job, a new man. I will admit, I'm not feeling so hot. I actually went on a walk with a friend yesterday and she asked, how's the podcast? How's it going? And like, how do you open up, Marissa? How do you put yourself out there? Right? 98 episodes sounds like I have achieved that somewhat. And I told her, I was like, girl, I don't know. And I am recording this on Sunday afternoon, hours before it airs at midnight, because I didn't take care of this episode this week. I did have a guest reschedule, so, I was banking on her, but I had time. I had time this week, and it's hard. And then, I don't know, the mean, harsh part of me is like, well, if you don't want to do it, then don't fucking do it. Don't have a fucking podcast. But I don't know. There's a middle ground. I do want to connect with you. I do want to empower you to stop playing small and start taking up space. And I also don't want to open up and be vulnerable. And there are so many things I haven't shared about on these podcasts, and so many things I have shared, but also this episode is only audio because I didn't feel like being on camera today. I am not feeling hot, feeling emotional. I want to cry, so I'll just cry. And I did write this episode, so I'm just gonna cry and keep reading, because I literally, the next line I wrote is, I've been feeling down. Not burnt out, but definitely crispy. Not cooked so much that I'm burnt, but there's some char in my emotional life that I've been dealing with and not dealing with. TBH. So, it's important to check in with yourself. And apparently, it's important for me to check in with myself, to surround ourselves with supportive content, like I hope this podcast is for you. Supportive people, like my friend, like my husband and brother-in-law and sister yesterday with our costumes. And it's important to check in. Okay, so I hope if you need to check in, you're doing that. And I hope I'm modeling that. Today's topic, this week's topic, this episode's topic, my Codependummy calendar. I'm discussing this because the past few weeks, when I have been feeling down, I've had a huge revelation about how fucked up and codependent my relationship is with time. My time versus other people's time. You see, like a true codependummy, I have been putting the thoughts, feelings, and needs and time of others above my own in an unconscious attempt to fulfill my own thoughts, feelings, needs, and time. Before I get into the narrative, the anecdotes and examples from my life, a few key points we are going to use as a lens for this episode. I want to remind you of the episode where we talked about the separation of tasks. Yes, for those of you who finished that sentence, you remembered the work of psychotherapist Alfred Adler, my boy, who was a pioneer in modern psychology about 100 years ago. So, the episode where I dive into Alfred Adler's work on the separation of tasks, it aired almost a year ago, November 22nd. And that episode explains it all, but I want to remind you of 2 points today. And if you want to listen to that episode for more context, I encourage you to do that. In his work with patients, Adler was all about healthy boundaries, even though they did not have that term back then. For him, he referred to healthy boundaries as the separation of tasks. For example, when a student is confronted with the task of studying, in Adlerian psychology, we consider that from the perspective, whose task is this? Whose task is this? In this example, it is the student's. It is the student's task to study and nobody else's. Not her mom or her dad or her friend or her lover. Adler states, he emphasizes that one does not intrude on other people's tasks. In general, he believed that all interpersonal relationship troubles are caused by intruding on other people's tasks or having your tasks intruded on. Carrying out the separation of tasks is enough to change one's interpersonal relationships dramatically, which I have experienced the past couple weeks, and you'll hear that as I continue. Adler wrote that the way to tell whose task it is to think, right? That question, whose task is this? And if that's not clear enough, who ultimately is going to receive the result brought about by the choice that is made? When a student has made the choice not to study, ultimately the result of that decision, not being able to keep up in class or get into her preferred graduate program, for instance, that does not have to be received by anybody else but her, right? Her parents are affected, yes. Her lover, her friends are affected, yes. But clearly, she is the one who will receive that result. So studying is her task. All right, there's the refresher on Adler. And keeping that in mind, I'm now going to list the 10 ways, as described by Marissa Esquibel, that a codependummy does not separate her tasks from others when it comes to her time, and thus has a codependummy calendar. Okay. Actually, I said 10, but it's 11. So 11. The 11 ways that a codependummy has a codependummy calendar. 1, she makes plans with others in mind. Okay, which isn't terrible. Okay, of course you want to keep others in mind when you're making plans, but this is to an extreme. Okay, she makes plans really with only others in mind and not herself in mind. Second, she doesn't make plans with others in mind because she is so preoccupied with those others she is thinking about. 3, she cancels or reschedules or rearranges her plans with others in mind, right? Not with herself in mind, with others in mind. 4, she lies or omits the truth to others about canceling, rescheduling to avoid conflict. 5, when plans are made and she has arrived, she waits patiently without complaint. And there's the asterisk here, and she usually arrives on time. 6, when plans are made and she's arrived and the other party is running late, she rationalizes away her anger, impatience, hurt, and other negative emotions. She rationalizes them away. Something must have happened. This isn't personal. Maybe they're in traffic. Maybe I'm being selfish by wanting them to be on time. I don't have anything else to do, so I should just wait. 7, when the other party is fairly late, she sends a text, or she calls or emails or contacts the other party to see where they are and continues to wait patiently while rationalizing her feelings away. 8, she reasons something must have happened if they continue to run late, and admonishes herself for being so impatient, self-centered, judgmental, and angry. Thou shalt not be angry. 9, she reaches out again to reschedule and does not mention her disappointment, anger, frustration that they no-showed, or she continues to wait. 10, she blames herself for not being clear. And this is 2 parts. So 10A, if she doesn't reach out to them to reschedule, she still blames herself since she could have said something, and thus her feelings are not valid. And 10 part B, she waits and waits. They finally arrive, and she acts as if nothing happened to ensure no conflict is aroused by continuing to blame herself. She should have been more clear. And the final step to maintain a codependummy calendar is she usually copes with the feelings that her time is not being taken seriously, that her time is not valued as much, right? She copes with the dissonance between her outward patience and her inward hostility in a manner that typically harms herself. She cuts, she eats, she drinks, she scrolls, she buys, she fucks, etc., all to maintain her relationship with the other party. As I read this list, I'm curious how you relate. Which ones, 1 through 11, resonate with you and how you feel about your time and other people's time? Now, this is not a comprehensive list, but this is the beginning of a topic that I will be discussing since, like I said, it's an area that I've realized I'm struggling with related to my codependency. So, what stands out to you, baby girl? All right, now let's hear about how and why I'm talking about this via an anecdote from my not so distant past. And before that, let's just take a hydration break. I've got some water. Maybe you have some water, Gatorade, kombucha, maybe some hot tea, some Celsius. Not a sponsor of the podcast, but I feel like everyone and their mom is suddenly obsessed with Celsius, including my husband. So, okay, water, hydration break, get your thirst need met. Okay. I believe it was the second week in September. I just come back from a trip with my husband, and I was settling back into the swing of things. And I wasn't doing so great. Like, I'm not doing so great now. Yeah, it's been mm, sadder lately, more sad. And yeah, there were signs. So I'm picking at my cuticles. I'm lingering in the kitchen to snack more after a full meal. I was picking random arguments with my husband over mm, little things. And I was, as I am, and I will be asking myself, what gives? Part of me thought maybe it's because I just came back from vacation, or, maybe I'm just weak and doomed and toxic and I can't handle the realities of day to day life, maybe, or something else. And I was fortunate to be meeting with my spiritual director that week. And I shared with him the litany of the feelings I was having, along with my behaviors, picking my nails. I'm finding comfort in, I'm like eating emotionally. I'm, bickering. And he gave me the feedback that I have heard and continue to hear, and likely will have to be reminded of in the future. He said, Marissa, I think you have too many responsibilities. And I tearfully disagreed with him, as I minimized all the things I'm dealing with. I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. Thankfully, he pushed back and said, no, I think you do. You have too many responsibilities. And he said, you're not being authentic in your responsibilities. And I was like, fuck. That resonates. All right. And fast forward, I think I had therapy like the next day. I just had all my support that week. So met with my therapist, and a combination of what I discussed with my spiritual director and then with her, it was evident that I did have too many responsibilities. And one of them was being everyone else's secretary. It was like I was wearing a name tag, and my name, right? It's like my name is, and my name was everyone, like your secretary. Oh, who are you? Oh, hi, I'm your secretary. My name is Marissa. I am your secretary, and I'm everybody else's secretary. Because I was following all those 11 ways of having a codependummy calendar, a mixture of like unconsciously, semi-consciously, not fully consciously, obviously, because who wants to do that? Well, obviously I did. And I was neglecting to honor myself and my time. So I came out of therapy, did some ongoing reflection, meditating, journaling, talking to my husband, maybe my sister about it. And I decided I quit. I quit. I no longer can be your secretary. I resign as everyone else's secretary. And since then, it has been liberating and heartbreaking at the same fucking time. I'm going to give you 3 examples from that week. First, I had a podcast interview scheduled, early on. Okay, so I quit being everyone else's secretary. I had a podcast interview maybe that following Monday, and at 10 a.m. And when I book guests, it's formal. I send a, hey, would you like to come on? Here's a link to schedule. I send all this information. They sign a guest agreement. It's involved. It's involved. And then it's on their calendar for both of us to see. We get notifications, etc. Okay. So I log on at 10 a.m. It's 10:01. It's 10:03. It's 10:05. In the past, like a day before, I met with my spiritual director and then met with my therapist. The day before all of that realization interaction started, I probably would have emailed her at 10:02, maybe 10:03, because I didn't want to seem anal. 10:03. Hey, we are scheduled to record. Are you on your way? At 10:04, maybe 10:05, I probably would have texted her. And then at 10:10, I likely would have called. And if she hadn't answered any of those efforts, I would have emailed her to say, hey, not sure what happened, but here are 3 times I'm available later this week. All the labor. But I was in this new frame of mind, trying not to be everyone else's secretary, trying to separate my tasks with my meetings with others' tasks. And so at 10:05, I logged off and I had to go knock. My husband and I, we both work from home. So I knocked on his office door and I was like, hey, I had someone scheduled at 10. It's 10:05. She has yet to log on. It's okay for me to end the call and proceed with my day. Right? There was still a question. Like I needed to seek that validation. Right? Whose task is this? I took care of my part of the task. Okay? So it was hers. It was hers. It was hers. It's a professional podcast. You guys have heard some of the speakers, very established therapists, authors, coaches, yoga teachers, and, the likely 60, 70 people I've had thus far, they figured it out. So that was an example of the new I'm no longer your secretary behavior. Second, I was attending a meeting with multiple people, okay, later that week. And someone had scheduled the meeting and said, I'd like everyone to be on, it was virtual, at 4:30. Okay. So, and then they sent a reminder in the morning, like, hey, we have a call at 4:30. Okay, yep, got it. Log on at 4:30. And the initiator of the meeting was late. In the past, I would have called, texted, and waited patiently for them to arrive. But no more. I logged on at 4:30, 4:31, 4:33. Another attendee did text the initiator and said, hey, we're here. Didn't hear back. And at 4:35, I left. Third example, again, like that week, a fellow professional and I were scheduled to have a virtual coffee. In the past, I would have logged on and again, waited patiently for her to arrive. Maybe like 15 minutes. I probably would have waited 15 minutes with a call, text, email sprinkled at different intervals in between. And that week, right, I quit. So no more. 9 a.m., 9:03, 9:05. I'm out. Whose task is this, Marissa? For her to show up on her end of our meeting. It's her task. It's hers. So in the first example, just to end the story, wrap up each story. So the guest, she did email me, I think later that week, maybe the next day. And she was just like, hey, like, I'm so sorry. I got the time wrong. You know, she did, we're supposed to meet at 10. And I got the, like, this person's in your Zoom room at like 10:20 something. And I was like, really? So I just ignored it. And she emailed and was like, hey, like, I'm sorry. I think she got the time mixed up or the date or something. And I emailed her back and I said, I appreciate your apology. I did appreciate her apology, right? The acknowledgement that we agreed upon this time to meet. I did not join at that time, and I'm sorry. I said, thank you. I appreciate that apology. In the second example, the initiator of the meeting, they did actually text a number of minutes afterwards, maybe, 12, 13 minutes, like, hey, like, can you log on? And I was like, no, like, I really had moved on with my afternoon. And then they did text me that nobody called me, right? Suggesting that nobody called me, like you, Marissa, you did not call me. And this is the hard part for us codependummies when we start to make changes like this. We get an invitation of responsibility for other people. With that statement, my codependummy heart heard, Marissa, you should have called. Marissa, it was your task to call and remind them. Marissa, other people's tasks are your tasks. You are responsible for your tasks and the tasks of others. Oh, and Marissa, your time is not valuable. It's not as valuable as theirs. You can wait, they can run late, and then you can log back on and start a meeting late and push back all your plans. Because your schedule is up to them, right? Let's fulfill their thoughts, feelings, and needs, and maybe you'll get your own met. So that was tough. That was really tough. And I was like, hey, we waited, and I think it's best you apologize and try to reschedule, which was also really hard for me to say. And even now I'm like, oh God, what if they're listening? Are they going to be upset? But it's like, it's okay to talk about this, and it's okay to arrive at meetings, girls, at the agreed upon time, to wait a compassionate number of minutes, and then to move on with your day. It's okay. It really is. And I think I need to hear that too. And then in the third situation, I emailed the fellow professional. I did discern it was best, right? She didn't show. I could have just logged off and never talked to her, written her off as unprofessional. But I said, hey, looks like we weren't able to meet, which is very indirect language. I know that. But she did apologize. She recognized that she had mixed up the day. And I did want to meet with her. I did want to give her a second chance. So we agreed to reschedule for the same day and the same time the following week. And she did not make it. So, miss a meeting once, not shame, but like that's on you. And then miss a rescheduled meeting twice. Now it's up to me what I ultimately want to do in the situation. So I did discern to just send her a like, hey, it looks like things haven't been working out. And I just shared some resources that I wanted to connect her with. And that was it. Somewhere during this timeline, it was maybe like a 2 or 3 week timeline. It's been, now it's probably been like a full 5 or 6 weeks. And this has happened over and over again. And it's hard. It's hard to navigate. It's hard to handle. I have been dealing with a lot of mixed feelings. Like I said, liberated and heartbroken. But yeah, just I'm not used to this. I'm not used to dealing with the disappointment, the hurt, the frustration. I've just been the one to fix, to mend, to make myself available so I can have these meetings, so I can get this connection, even if the other person isn't as invested in that. And as a consequence, I believe, to all of these no-shows and mishaps was my husband and I, we agreed to get together to work on some stuff around the house. Very tedious, boring things. And we are supposed to do on a Saturday. And he's like, oh no, I can't today. I'm really busy. Let's do Tuesday afternoon. I was like, sure, Tuesday afternoon. And I rescheduled, or I scheduled with that in mind. Not with him in mind, but our agreed upon time. And it came to that time, and I sought him out. went to his home office and I said, hey, it's this time. We are supposed to work on these things at this time. And he, without looking at me, he continued to look at his computer because he was so busy. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't right now. And my codependent demon came out. And I was like, yes. And I kept saying, kept making statements related to that. It's my time, my time. And the codependent dragon, the codependent demon in me, I was just like blowing fire was coming out of my throat. I was so upset. And I don't know, did I talk about this on a previous episode? No, I can't remember. Maybe I did. Maybe the rage one. But yeah, it was rage. And talked about it in therapy after the fact. And my therapist was like, that is what we call, she didn't say this, but she was like, that was a buildup. That, ladies, is what we call a buildup of emotions. There's another word. Freud actually talked about it. Displacement. When you displace your feelings towards others, there's more of a threat. So I can't express that towards the podcast interviewee or that initiator of the meeting or this fellow professional who kept missing our meetings. I couldn't respond with vitriol in my emails or texts or correspondence with them, but my husband was the recipient of the hostility and resentment. And this is what happens when 3 things. Okay, first, you take on everyone else's secretarial tasks related to time. Second, you start to quit taking on everyone else's secretarial tasks. And third, you don't deal so well with all the emotions and feelings that come up from quitting that position and focusing solely on your tasks. It's very complicated and very involved. And like I said, I've had so many experiences. It was that week, it was the week after, it has been in the weeks that have preceded. And I have been left wondering if I'm not making plans, if I'm not confirming, if I'm not sending the, hey, where are you? Text, call, or email. Will anyone ever hang out with me, meet with me, show up for me? I know that, I know that it won't mean I'm terminally lonely, but also, yes, this has been very disillusioning to not be everyone else's secretary. And now I have to deal with the anger, the loneliness, the hurt that comes from people not following through on their task, right? It's a shared task, this meeting, and I'm doing my part. Other people, some people aren't doing theirs, and I have to see, right, who does and doesn't value my time. I have to hold people accountable if they're late AF. I don't know what is actually going to happen long term because I'm still in the thick of it and figuring it out right now. I'm still making plans with others. Other people are making those plans right alongside me, and some of them are breaking those plans, and I'm trying to take care of myself in the meantime. And I wonder if you've had similar thoughts. If I'm not your secretary, will you still meet with me? If you're running late or miss our meeting, will you be mad at me for not reminding you that you were supposed to be here? If I try to find balance between yours and my thoughts, feelings, and needs and time, can we have a relationship? Or is it not possible without me prioritizing your time over mine? Baby girl, I will keep you posted. And I will say my husband, thankfully, he did get up and we did fix stuff that day. And he's doing better with some other aspects of time. And I've been making friends. And one thing I do appreciate is they have texted me like, hey, like, are we on for tomorrow on the walk? Or hey, like, just confirming coffee tomorrow. I'm like, yes, I will be there. Thank you for confirming. So yeah, people have and do show up for me. I'm just having to navigate how I can show up for myself when others don't. And I want to end with 10 practices to help you relinquish the task of being everyone else's secretary and having a codependummy calendar. So we can have, right? So we want to become a codependent demon or a codependent dragon. We become codependent diamonds with our calendars. So to stop being everyone else's secretary. 1, make plans with another human being or human beings. Plans that are not a huge inconvenience to you, but a balance of you both taking time to be together. 2, arrive at said place or space at or near the confirmed meeting time. If you're running late, communicate. I'm running late. Okay, I need a little water break. 3, wait 5 minutes if the other human or humans are running late. 4, if they have not emailed, called, texted, sent some other type of notification, you can discern whether you want to reach out to them, whether you want to keep waiting, or whether you want to leave. This practice is all about discernment, okay? 5, if you do leave, engage in a coping activity to deal with the knee-jerk guilt, worry, shame, regret, dread that you've made a huge mistake and should have reached out to them because you're technically their secretary. Got to engage in some coping activity. 6, carry on with another activity you had on your to-do list that day. Maybe you wanted to read. Maybe you wanted to go shop. Maybe you wanted to listen to the Codependummy podcast episode. Carry on with that. 7, discern, another discernment step, discern whether or not you want to reach out to that person. Hey, I see we weren't able to meet today. You could be like, hey, you didn't show up, if you want to be direct. Not sure what happened. Can you send me some times you're available next week? So you give them the task of rescheduling because they did drop the ball. So they need to pick it up. 8, give that other human a second chance, if you so sense it's best, to see if they can keep their word the next scheduled meeting. And 9, you repeat steps 1 through 7 as needed. And 10, the most important step to stop having a codependummy calendar is to give yourself all the compassion and tenderness that you need while you work on taking back your time. Taking it back. I'm going to end with, actually conclude, because I talked about end, but we're going to wrap up with a quote by Adler, my boy. He said, "We are not determined by our experiences, but are self-determined by the meaning we give to them. And when we take particular experiences as the basis for our future life, we are almost certain to be misguided to some degree. Meanings are not determined by situations." And I want to share that for myself and for you, just because a lot of people are no-showing or running late or canceling or being flaky or just disrespecting my time does not mean that that is going to happen all the time. And I have found new friends. I have seen my husband make efforts. I know a lot of professionals who keep their appointments. And so to that part of me that's scared and feels sad and disheartened because I'm no longer everyone else's secretary and worried that I'll be doomed to a life of loneliness, I need to remember that people do show up. People have shown up. People have taken responsibility for their tasks, and I can continue to take responsibility for mine to separate those tasks and really create strong interpersonal relationships. So episode 98, that is a wrap. Thank you for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe, and share. We need more ratings on Spotify. If you can add a 5-star review, that would be amazing. Also, some resources. Get yourself a copy of the Confiding Codependummy, 30 Days of Journaling Prompts for a Less Codependent and More Conscious You. That's at codependummy.com/tools for healing. We also have the Self-Validation Challenge. It's a free 30-day guide to provide yourself with all the validation you seek. If you're wanting to dive deeper into your codependency, I told you I have openings. Email Marissa at codependummy.com. Oh, this is misspelled. Okay, I just fixed it. You can sign up for the newsletter. There's a link to that in the show notes. And there's also a link to make a one-time secure donation via PayPal to support the show. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Bye. Hey girl, it's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster, I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Marissa. Email me, Marissa at codependummy.com. Check out Codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.